the title of my talk, as it says here, is In the Beginning God Created, Why Art Matters for Theology. And I'm going to I sort of broke that into part 1 and part 2, sort of in the beginning, and then why art matters. So, here we go. And I'm going to read this because if I wing it, we're in trouble. Oh, I will tell you, and I'll tell you why. Because I've put all the negative notes in the footnotes, right? I have a tendency to complain sometimes, even when things are going well. And so John took the brunt of that yesterday, mostly. And I think it's all out of my system. And so I'm hoping that what I say is celebratory. But every now and then, if I get upset, I will tell you what's in one of the footnotes, okay? Just so you know. All right, the visual arts section of the Atlantic School of Theology's art programming began 3 years ago in response to a perceived need for a visual arts presence at the school. As the initiator of this program, I committed to a volunteer position as exhibitions director and curator for a 2-year pilot project. Supported by funding from the library, and Joyce Thompson isn't here, but largely due to her efforts, I've continued to hold these positions for an additional year. Over these 3 years, hundreds, literally hundreds, of people who might not otherwise have had opportunity or taken time to visit our campus have been introduced to the school. The local media, radio, television, and print lent their support by generously promoting exhibition openings and artist talks. In addition, our sister institutions, the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design, or NASCAD, and St. Mary's University, or SMU, have praised our efforts and offered support in various ways. We began our project by transforming the large common room of the AST library into a gallery space for exhibitions and calling together a small ad hoc committee to oversee the program. As curator, I organized 6 exhibitions by professional artists for our new gallery space, each exhibition highlighting a different artistic medium and style. Catalogs were produced for the exhibitions in which a curatorial essay helped to provide the context for the artworks. And that was basically why this work in this space, because this was relatively new concept for our school, and there was a lot of what's that to begin with. So primarily education was one of the first aims. While our educations and artist talks have reached many beyond our immediate neighborhood, our web presence has literally linked us to a global community. The result of making the images and the curatorial statements online. And we've received feedback about this from the States, from artists, from people interested in theology and the arts, from as far away as the Philippines. While inspired by American models, our visual arts programming here is unique among Canadian seminaries, and it was our hope to provide a workable model as a resource for other schools desiring a closer connection with the contemporary visual arts. So during our first operation, we also, in addition to the 6 exhibitions, we issued a call to church schools asking that children respond visually to the question, how do I know God loves me? And so we put that on the web, and we tried to reach out to as many churches as we were able, but it's just so hard to get the word out there sometimes. The result was an exhibition featuring over 150 artworks from 14 churches, representing 3 denominations. So I thought we did really well with our sort of meager attempt at advertising that. For several months, our gallery walls were graced with colorful paintings, drawings, and sculptures by children from 4 years of age to 14, providing us with a visual record of their theological ideas on the topic. And I have a footnote for that one. I really felt as an artist, because this symposium is about honesty, that this project was largely undervalued by the school. My hope was to provide visual data that could be used, so the images that came in were cross-referenced along lines of gender and age and denomination. And I thought it would be a perfect opportunity for people, pastors and theologians and others to look at what children were producing so that we have an idea of how our church schooling is being perceived by them instead of, just sort of going on perhaps to do what we do. Not that I'm really implying everybody does that. But I just felt that few people made use of that or even noticed that that was a possibility. And again, I will take part of the blame for that because it was really hard just to get all of that information out there. There just weren't enough bodies at that time. We have more bodies now. As a practicing artist with a background in theology, my initial task was to set up a working studio. We've switched here, the Wabash Project. This is why we're here. In November 2010, Dr. David Dean, who'll speak after me, and I received a grant from the Wabash Center in Indiana, permitting us to develop an artist-in-residence program at the school. The purpose of the project was to gain a better understanding of how visual art might provide a pedagogical tool for teaching and learning theology. That was sort of part two of the initial presentation I had made. I wanted to see a visual arts presence, an artist in residence, and then a resource for clergy, churches, congregations here at the school, because I think that we have the potential for it, and we have no one else is doing it. You go look for resources in Canada that speak to these specific kinds of issues between theology and art that we deal with here, and you're not going to find them, or you're not easily going to find them. So, as a practicing artist with a background in theology, my initial task was to set up a working studio in a small section of an unused building on the ASD campus. And again, I have a little footnote that I'll share with you. Yeah, David's laughing. The request to set up a studio in an unused building, which was already being heated and had electricity and plumbing in good working order, was met with resistance from some at the school, even though the financial cost to the school was minimal. And that really hurt. That really hurt. And when I would complain about this to David, he said, it's just part of the data. So I thought I'd give you that part of the data. During the first session of Dr. Dean's systematic course on the doctrine of original sin, that's a good place to start, I introduced the concept of visual art as a methodology for doing theological study. Students were given the choice of writing a traditional 5,000-word research paper or working in the studio with me to explore and communicate their ideas of a topic centered on that through visual expression. What would you choose, right? Studio requirements for this course included written and visual reflection on the course readings. Art is not a bird course. In the form of journaling, the production of a small body of artworks relevant to the theme of the course, and oral exams at the end of the semester administered first by me and then by Dr. Dean. Participation in the exhibition, which is currently on display in the gallery, and those of you who haven't seen that, perhaps at lunchtime you might have the opportunity to go into the library and see that exhibition. This is the last day for it. Much interest in the proposal was generated, but due to financial and spatial limitations, we found it necessary to cap the number of student participants at 8 from the 20-plus students that were enrolled in the class. In addition to studio work, a series of 45-minute lectures and or workshops was arranged for Tuesday afternoons to help introduce students to various art theories and techniques, as most students had little or no art-making experience. While some were unable to attend the presentations due to unavoidable scheduling problems, many did attend, as well as some who were not in Dr. Dean's class. In fact, Susan Wolak brought her entire class one day to do a workshop on liturgy and creativity and the arts, and we had a good time. A small but consistent group of interested persons managed to show up each week to explore topics such as basic design, lateral thinking, non-objective painting, color theory, visual images in the church, feeling in painting, thinking in painting, evaluating artworks, and spectator theory, each presented by an expert in the field. general studio time was set for Tuesdays and Thursdays, permitting one-on-one time for me to interact with students on technical issues, such as how to apply acrylic paint, and theological concepts, such as how to express a theological idea in a visual format, how to make your idea into symbolic kind of language that you could manipulate. Students were asked to record their reflections and insights in their journals, which I viewed periodically, offering tips on possibilities for translating ideas into visual statements. A key to the studio was made available at the library for students who preferred to work independently as well. And on average, students spent about 2 hours each week in the studio, some a little more, some a little less, and in addition to the Tuesday presentations. To address the problem of not having specific skill sets for art making, such as drawing, I encouraged a non-representational approach to image making, and you'll see that when you go over to look at the exhibition or if you've seen it. In the final month of the program, each student chose a few paintings to refine both technically and theologically for the exhibition. Preparation included discussion on how the perceptions of spectators were relevant to the concepts students were trying to express with their work. The project culminated in an exhibition of works which were selected by the student and myself. Most expressed satisfaction with at least one piece of art they had created during the semester. And the exhibition opening gave students the opportunity to interact with the viewers of their work. And this, of course, was the first time that they had an opportunity to do this, and it's at once humbling and exciting. The makeshift studio was dismantled at the end of the semester, and this symposium marks the end of our research project. At present, the future of the Arts and Theology program at AST is uncertain. Now, part 2, why art matters for theology. I should give you a little disclaimer. These are not necessarily the views of the school. Theology is an intellectual pursuit. It is thinking about God, the ongoing process of faith-seeking understanding through successive generations of Christians. As Anselm suggests, God is that than which none greater can be conceived. But neither Anselm, nor any other theologian for that matter, seems to have been prevented from trying anyway. Appealing to our sense of value and logic, they, theologians, continue to present intellectual packages to help us make sense of what can seem to be nonsense. However, for early Christians, it was not ideas or systems that were essential to their faith, but the immediacy and intimacy of the experience of God. The Eucharist, for example, a primary ritual for Christians since its inception, was, for the early Christians, not a memorial ceremony, but an intimate encounter with the resurrected Christ, a sacramental action through which the elements of the bread and the wine made present the felt reality, the felt presence of Christ for those who participated in the ritual. However, as decades and centuries passed, and Christianity climbed from the darkness of the catacombs into the gray light of an authoritarian, power-hungry Roman culture, the perceived need for community cohesiveness overtook personal experience of revelation as the primary basis for Christian thinking. As Pelagians, Arians, and Anastasians, I'm not good at pronunciation, as they vied for political dominance in the 4th century, written Christian doctrine superseded personal experience, and the winners got to write the history we now consider tradition. Or at least that's how I see it. However, this is not a history lesson, and I am no historian. My point here can be succinctly put this way. As Christianity evolved, communal doctrine replaced personal experience as the framework for the developing church. Now, I recognize that this is a somewhat controversial statement, but I ask you to suspend disbelief